The lights of the America's Got Talent stage glowed brighter than ever, sweeping across the audience like the soft flicker of a sunrise, warming faces, raising anticipation, filling the air with the kind of energy that only comes when something extraordinary is about to unfold. The cameras positioned themselves, the crowd leaned forward, and the judges adjusted in their seats, unsure yet sensing that something meaningful was moments away. It was in this thick atmosphere of expectation that he stepped into the wings, hands trembling slightly, eyes glistening with a mix of memories and hope. Ernesto, the Filipino carpenter's son, the boy who once swept sawdust off his father's workshop floor while dreaming secretly of a microphone and a stage, was back. Years ago, he had walked onto this same stage, nervous and unsure but hopeful, singing with a voice filled with raw emotion. The world had recognized him for a moment, but life had a way of bringing storms, and his journey had not been easy. Now, in 2025, he returned, older, stronger, carrying scars that told stories of struggle, sacrifice, heartbreak, and perseverance. Backstage, he inhaled deeply, fingers brushing against the worn wooden pendant his father carved for him before passing away. He closed his eyes as the memory replayed, his father telling him he was born to do something beautiful, something that touched people's hearts. Ernesto had promised he would try, and now, with the memory of that promise burning inside him, he stood ready. A stagehand approached him, whispering that he would step out in 15 seconds. Ernesto nodded, trying to quiet the pounding of his heart. He didn't have the expensive clothes or glamorous background of many contestants, but what he carried was something deeper, a lifetime of pain mixed with unshakable humility, and a voice shaped by experience. He knew this was his chance, maybe his last one, and he wasn't going to waste it. The floor manager signaled, the music dimmed, the audience hushed, and the stage doors opened. Ernesto walked slowly into the spotlight, blinking slightly as the brilliance washed over him. People in the crowd murmured, some recognizing him instantly. A few gasped. Simon Cowell leaned forward, eyebrows raised, studying him with curiosity mixed with a faint trace of memory. Simon wasn't easy to impress. He had seen thousands of singers come and go, and yet something about Ernesto, something in his eyes, maybe, made him sit up straighter. The host introduced him simply as Ernesto from the Philippines, returning to the AGT stage after many years. The audience erupted in cheers, waving flags, clapping loudly. Ernesto offered a shy, grateful smile and nodded respectfully at the judges. Simon asked gently why he had come back. Ernesto swallowed and gathered his words carefully. He said life had taken him in directions he never expected. After his last audition, he had returned home, where his father fell ill. Ernesto had spent years taking care of him, working long hours as a carpenter, singing only at night to keep hope alive. When his father died, he thought the dream died too. But then, one evening, while fixing a broken chair for a neighbor, he heard AGT was holding auditions again. Something told him to try. Not for fame, not for money, but to honor the man who believed in him before anyone else did. The audience grew silent, moved by his honesty. Simon's expression softened, eyes narrowing with a mix of empathy and anticipation. The band behind the stage waited for his cue. Ernesto looked down at the pendant in his hand, kissed it lightly, and nodded to the sound engineer. The first soft notes of the piano rolled out into the auditorium, delicate, almost fragile. Ernesto lifted the microphone with trembling fingers. Then he closed his eyes, and began to sing. His voice came out like a whisper at first, barely more than a breath, but filled with an emotion so pure that even the crowd's breathing seemed to sync with his. Within seconds, his tone grew stronger, a rich, warm sound that wrapped around each listener like a gentle embrace. There was something haunting, something beautifully broken yet resilient in the way he shaped each word. Simon's face changed almost instantly. His cold, judging stare melted into something no one saw very often, an expression of being genuinely moved. He leaned closer, elbow on the table, lips slightly parted. Ernesto sang a song about loss, about carrying memories, about wanting one more day with someone who shaped your entire world. His voice trembled in the beginning but steadied as he reached the chorus, rising higher, clearer, overflowing with the kind of sincerity that cannot be faked. Audience members wiped tears from their eyes. Even the judges exchanged glances, all silently agreeing this was more than a performance. This was a story being poured into the air through sound. As Ernesto sang, memories filled his mind again, helping his father sand planks under the Manila sun, hearing his father laugh when he first tried to sing Whitney Houston songs, the way they would sit together at night eating simple meals while talking about dreams. His father never saw him on a big stage, he only saw the hardworking son who stayed by his side. Those thoughts surged through him as his voice swelled, giving rise to a powerful note that seemed to break every barrier between him and the audience. The crowd stood up one by one, unable to stay in their seats. Some placed hands on their hearts. Others covered their mouths, overwhelmed. The entire auditorium shifted into a wave of emotion, the kind that sweeps people into silence, making them forget everything except the moment unfolding before them. As Ernesto reached the final section of the song, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from feeling. The crack didn't ruin anything, instead, it made the performance real, raw, vulnerable. That single moment made people cry harder. Even Simon's eyes glistened under the lights. When the last note fell, drifting into silence like a prayer, Ernesto slowly lowered the microphone, chest rising and falling quickly as tears gathered in his eyes. The audience erupted instantly, cheering, shouting his name, clapping with overwhelming force. Some held up signs that said they remembered him from his first audition. But Simon didn't clap at first. He just stared at him, deeply moved. Then he slowly stood up. The audience gasped. Simon rarely stood for singers. His standing ovation sent a ripple of shock and excitement across the entire auditorium. The other judges stood too, clapping, cheering. Ernesto covered his mouth with his hand, overwhelmed. His knees almost buckled from emotion. When the applause finally settled, Simon leaned into his microphone. His voice was quieter than usual, almost gentle. He told Ernesto that sometimes, a singer returns, and sometimes that return is simply good. But this was something different. He said he felt every word, every breath, every ounce of pain and love that Ernesto poured into the performance. He told him his father would be proud. The audience cheered again, chanting Ernesto's name. Simon raised his hand to quiet them. Then he said that AGT was not just a stage for talents, it was a stage for stories, for voices that deserved to be heard. And Ernesto's voice was one the world needed. Then Simon paused, smiled faintly, and said he had one more thing left to do. He reached toward the golden buzzer. The entire auditorium gasped as his hand hovered above it. People grabbed their phones. Ernesto froze, hands trembling. Simon pressed it. Golden confetti exploded from the rafters, rushing down in a shimmering waterfall of gold light. Ernesto dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, wiping tears from his face as the crowd roared louder than ever. Judges stood, clapping, cheering, celebrating the moment. The host rushed onto the stage, pulling Ernesto into a hug. The confetti stuck to Ernesto's clothes, his hair, his tears. He looked upward, imagining his father seeing this moment from wherever he was. He whispered a thank you under his breath. As the golden lights continued to shine, Simon spoke again, telling him that his return was not just a comeback, it was a triumph. He reminded him that sometimes life gives people a second chance, not to fix what they lost, but to show who they became because of it. Backstage, when the moment finally settled and the confetti cleared, Ernesto stood alone for a moment, processing everything. His hands still trembled from the shock. The stage crew congratulated him as he walked down the hall, but he barely heard anything. His chest felt full, heavy with emotion yet weightless with joy. He sat on a simple bench, looking at the pendant again. He whispered that he had finally done it, that the dream wasn't dead, and that his father's belief had carried him through. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing, he had shown the world who he truly was. What he didn't know was that the clip of his audition was already going viral. Within minutes of airing, social media exploded with comments about the Filipino carpenter's son whose voice melted hearts. People stitched clips of Simon standing up, tears forming in his eyes. Many wrote long messages about how the performance reminded them of their own parents or loved ones. Others said they hadn't cried at an audition in years. The world responded because his story wasn't just his, it belonged to anyone who had ever lost someone but kept going. Producers interviewed him backstage, asking him what he wanted to say to the world. Ernesto smiled shyly and said he just wanted people to know that dreams don't expire, even if life gets hard, even if people doubt you, even if years pass. As long as the dream still beats inside your heart, you can return to it. In the following days, Ernesto's life transformed rapidly. Fans around the world reached out with love and encouragement. A clip of Simon's golden buzzer decision hit millions of views overnight. Radio stations talked about him. Philippine news outlets ran stories about the humble carpenter's son representing their country with pride. Even international singers reacted to his performance. But behind all the noise, Ernesto stayed grounded. He still visited small community centers, still helped neighbors with repairs, still lived the humble life he always had. Fame didn't change him, it only gave him a larger opportunity to touch hearts. As the competition progressed, Ernesto trained harder than ever. He took vocal lessons, studied breathing techniques, learned how to control his nerves. Yet he still carried his father's pendant to every rehearsal. The judges loved him not just for his voice, but for his humility. Many contestants were talented, but few had the emotional power he carried. On the night of the live shows, he stepped onto the stage once more. The audience cheered louder than before. Simon smiled proudly from his seat. He sang again, choosing another emotional ballad, and his voice filled the hall with the same sincerity and heart that had earned him the golden buzzer. The crowd erupted, judges praised him, and Simon told him once again that he was not just singing, he was healing people. By the time the finals approached, Ernesto had become a favorite. Fans believed he represented not only talent but also hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a child and a parent. When he walked on stage for his final performance, the crowd chanted his name, waving banners with his face printed next to the Philippine flag. His final song was dedicated to everyone who had ever loved someone deeply, lost them, and carried their memory as a source of strength. He sang with everything inside him: pain, love, courage, gratitude. It felt as though he poured his entire life's story into those few minutes. The hall fell silent, then exploded in emotion again. Judges rose to their feet. Some cried openly. Simon took a moment before speaking. He said entering AGT once is brave, but returning after heartbreak takes extraordinary strength. He told Ernesto that he reminded the world that success isn't measured by how far you go without falling, but by how many times you rise again. When the voting ended and the winner was announced, Ernesto didn't win first place, but he didn't need to. He became one of the most memorable contestants in AGT history. People said his audition would be remembered for years. More importantly, Ernesto knew he fulfilled his promise, to his father, to himself, to the dream he held onto through years of struggle. After the finale, he walked backstage once more. The lights were dim, the hall nearly empty. He touched the pendant on his chest and whispered that he hoped his father was proud. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the answer. And as he stepped out into the night, he knew this was only the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, built not from fame but from heart, courage, and the unshakable belief that even a carpenter's son can stand on the world's biggest stage and make millions feel something real.